Hello everyone and welcome back to another edition of the Eleusinian Society. Sorry for the delay in posting, I just got back from a little trip up to our cabin, enjoyed the nice scenery, did a little bit of hiking, a little bit of fishing, had a really good time, so I'm glad to be back making content. We're going to do a quick video today of something that kind of caught my attention while recently watching The Prince of Egypt. Something that everyone knows but not many actually understand. There's a famous scene where Moses goes to Pharaoh to say the famous line, "Let my people go," and then something incredible happens. Moses lays down his staff, and then it turns into a snake. In scripture, it's actually Aaron, the brother of Moses, who does this. A pretty tame story compared to the other miraculous things that happened in Exodus, like the parting of the Red Sea and the overnight death of the firstborns of Egypt. This then turns into arguably one of the greatest villainous songs in animated movie history.
Playing with the big boys now.
What makes this story interesting to me is the fact that the priests of Egypt had the ability to do the exact same trick using their staffs. This means, at least according to theatrical portrayals, that the priests of Egypt, when calling upon their gods, could perform magical actions that are normally reserved for those faithful to the Judeo-Christian God in the Bible. For the first time in biblical text, the supernatural abilities of polytheists is confirmed. To get a better understanding of how this is similar yet different from the powers of Moses, we need to read the passage in Exodus 7 directly and pick up on any clues that might be given in this translation. Exodus 7 reads, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'See, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron will be your prophet. You are to say everything I command you, and your brother Aaron is to tell Pharaoh to let the Israelites go out of his country. But I will harden the Pharaoh's hearts, and though I multiply my signs and wonders in Egypt, he will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt, and with mighty acts of judgment I will bring out my divisions, my people the Israelites. And the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring the Israelites out of it.'" So this bit of pre-context to the snake incident sets the tone that God understands that the Egyptians practice a religion that is different from the Hebrews, and that through his power, he will show them that he has more power than all of their deities combined. The interesting line here is when God tells Moses, "I have made you like God," and that Aaron will be his prophet, mirroring the future relationship between God and Jesus Christ. Pharaoh is mentioned by God as the main opposition in Egypt. This is because, according to Egyptian culture, the Pharaoh was a god on earth that had the wisdom to govern their people in the same ways that gods did. The primary symbols of the Pharaoh were the crook and flail, the shepherd's hook that helped them care for their people, and the whip that aided in controlling them. As far back as Egyptian history has been recorded, the Pharaoh always had high priests assisting them in three ways: spiritually, magically, and in death. They spoke with the gods of ancient Egypt for wisdom and advice and translated their premonitions to the Pharaoh. They created spells and blessed sacred objects that would aid the Pharaoh and his people in their daily lives. And the priests were also fluent in the funerary rites of the time and would assist in the embalming process and provide charms which would be wrapped in the linen around the deceased to assist them as they passed through the Duat into the field of reeds. Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord commanded them. Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. At the time of meeting the Pharaoh and demanding the freedom of the Hebrews, Moses and Aaron were in their 80s, which at the time was nearly 2.5 times the average lifespan. Moses and Aaron would live well into their hundreds, which alone is a magical endeavor. Let's read the story of the snake staff and see if it can give us more context. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When Pharaoh says to you, 'Perform a miracle,' then say to Aaron, 'Take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, and it will become a snake.'" So, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did just as the Lord commanded. Aaron threw his staff down in front of Pharaoh and his officials, and it became a snake. Pharaoh then summoned wise men and sorcerers, and the Egyptian magicians also did the same things by their secret arts. Each one threw down his staff, and it became a snake. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Yet Pharaoh's heart became hard, and he would not listen to them, just as the Lord had said. Wait, what? The wise men and sorcerers performed physical transformation from a piece of wood into a living creature by their secret arts? The term secret arts is never mentioned again in the Bible outside of Exodus. According to further passages, other plagues that fell upon Egypt in the time of Moses were recreated by Pharaoh's sorcerers as well, like in Exodus 8:7. But the magicians did the same by their secret arts. They also made frogs come upon the land of Egypt. And some were attempted to be replicated but couldn't be, like in Exodus 8:18. But when the magicians tried to produce gnats by their secret arts, they could not, since the gnats were on people and animals everywhere. In the 1901 book Egyptian Magic by E.A. Wallace Budge, a compilation of Egyptian magical texts, there's a chapter where we can read and get a better understanding of how the Egyptian priests were able to use their power to transform their staffs into snakes. Now the Egyptians believed that as the souls of the departed could assume the form of any living thing or plant, so the gods, who in many respects closely resembled them, could and did take upon themselves the form of birds and beasts. This was the fundamental idea of the so-called Egyptian animal worship, which provoked the merriment of the cultured Greek and drew down upon the Egyptians the ridicule and abuse of early Christian writers. But if the matter be examined closely, its apparent stupidity disappears. The Egyptians paid honor to certain birds and animals and reptiles, because they considered that they possessed certain of the characteristics of the gods to whom they made them sacred. The bull was a type of the strength and procreative power of the god of reproduction in nature, and the cow was a type of his female counterpart. Every sacred animal and living thing possessed some quality or attribute which was ascribed to some god, and as each god was only a form of Ra, the quality or attribute ascribed to him was that of the sun god himself. The educated Egyptian never worshipped an animal as an animal, but only as an incarnation of a god, and the reverence paid to animals in Egypt was in no way different from that paid to the king, who was regarded as divine, and as an incarnation of Ra the sun god, who was the visible symbol of the creator. One of the gods that the priests and prince of Egypt mention in their song is Wajet. The goddess of nourishment, which is shown in hieroglyphs as a cobra. Another goddess mentioned in the song is Mut, mother of Egypt, who combined her soul with her husband Ra to create the transformed Amun-Ra. She is oftentimes shown as human-like, but is also commonly portrayed as a cobra. Now, I know that it's just a song from an animated film, but it is interesting that they included subcontext simply by using certain names of deities before transforming a stick into a cobra. Oh, and just as a final little Easter egg in this mini rant about song lyrics, they mention Heket,
Hemsut, Tefnut, Heket, Maftet,
the frog-headed goddess of birth and fertility. As stated earlier, the priests were able to recreate the plague of frogs, but not the plague of gnats, because, well, in my opinion, I guess there's no gnat god in the Egyptian pantheon. Later scripture readings clearly state that forms of witchcraft and sorcery in the name of false gods go against biblical law. See commandment number 1. But it is interesting that in the time before Christ, two men from two separate cultures were able to use the power of their respective gods to perform the impossible. If I had to, as an unbiased observer, give an opinion on how this happened, I would simply say that both sides in their own view were using faith to do so, and that their abilities came from unwavering belief in their higher power. As someone who practices the Judeo-Christian faith, I know it's a hard concept to grasp that pagan sorcerers could use magical powers on a similar level to someone as important as Moses. But, as Jesus said himself, if you have faith and do not doubt, then you can cast this mountain into the sea. Faith is energy behind miracles, and when miracles are misunderstood, we, humanity, associate the impossible as magic. I'd like to thank you for joining us on another edition of the Eleusinian Society. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, so you can see our future videos.